Western religious tradition produces both the reaction against biotechnology, which they're associated with, and we know they're associated with, and in addition, it produces a next generation of what I would call a post-Christian opposition to biotechnology among those who grew up with Western religion and have rejected it. So if you think about Western religion, and Western religion is most codified in a Catholic, in the Catholic area. The Western religion, Catholics, other Christians of the same thought, have no problem with biotechnology when it is applied to animals and plants. So they're fine, you know, they'll say just let's regulate it properly and let's consider it in terms of whether it's economically good or bad and, you know, how it affects the environment. That's fine. Their sole area of concern is biotechnology's use on human beings, and human beings includes the class, to them, of single-cell embryos. So all of that opposition comes down to single-cell embryos. They question the use of drugs that can affect the way people think. Drugs like Ritalin, for example, drugs that increase your memory or decrease. They're worried about that. But the most important worry is at the embryo stage, where they think scientists are killing human beings. It's very clear. What has happened, especially in Europe, where genetically modified foods are absolutely forbidden, if not in law, by the culture. There's a huge war going on between Europe and the United States in terms of whether Europe will allow the importation of genetically modified foods. And what you find in Europe is most people have given up traditional religion. So you have this whole continent that was Catholic, and young people have come up since World War II, have thrown off the church, especially in France, and my speculation now, this is not a fact, my speculation is they've thrown off the church, and the church had this God in the sky, over a single God, not many gods, God in the sky, God knows the future, God is trying to get you to go into along the right path, don't mess with God. Now, if you throw away that, there might be an emptiness in your stomach. You might need some other spiritual idea to replace the God of the Bible. And the idea that is filled in so easily is the Mother Nature goddess, Gaia. So people now say, okay, Mother Nature is one God, that comes from Western tradition, and we shouldn't mess with Mother Nature. We shouldn't be tampering, and all the crops are part of Mother Nature, and it all sits in this balance, and if we tamper with it, the whole thing will collapse, and that's bad. That's an ideology, that's a religion. It's not a religion that has a name, but I think that's where the opposition to biotechnology in the non-human sphere comes from. I would say that transhumanism, if it's a religion, it has no relationship to the real world right now. The religion is based on speculating that human beings can become post-human beings. And I find it to be a very strange group of people because I who talk about this a lot, don't think this is going to happen, that people are going to evolve during my lifetime. And it doesn't matter what I say, 100 years from now, people are going to be talking and they'll have their own decisions to make. And so I'm not sure what transhumanists want. To me, it's more of a science fiction cult than anything else. Now, how does that differ from the Mother Nature cult? The difference is that transhumanists can be ignored, and it has no effect on the world. Whereas the Mother Nature cult does have an effect on the world. They have a huge effect. They have prevented Europe from bringing in genetically modified foods that would help Europeans eat for less money. Now, the Europeans are rich, so they can spend more money for their food and still be satisfied. But then the Europeans will go to sub-Saharan Africa and tell the sub-Saharan Africans not to allow the United States to send grain, even though their people are starving in sub-Saharan Africa. You don't want to take American grain because American grain is genetically modified. And so, in my mind, anybody who says that is religious because essentially they are sacrificing individual human beings for the good of some greater ideology. The difference between Eastern and Western religions is far, far greater than the difference between Christianity and Judaism and Islam. Those three religions all come out of the same background, Bible book, if you will, even though people in those areas are at each other's throats. In the East, there are many different religions, and what you can say about them is that, unlike the West, they don't have a single God who's in charge. Either they have many gods, or they have no gods. And so it's never one, it's zero or many. And so there isn't a single god to please. The gods are actually fighting with each other in the Hindu religion. So that's the first point. And the second point is they have a notion of life based on karma, or they believe there is no soul. I mean, so it's one extreme or the other. And karma basically means that you come back, you're reincarnated based on what you do yourself. You're not listening to anybody else. You just follow what is right for you, and you don't have to obey these bigger rules. And also, there isn't this future Jerusalem in the sky, which is where Western religions come from. You better follow the rules, and that's going to get you to the future Jerusalem. And I think that also affects the post-Christians, all the non-religious people. They also think you don't follow the rules, the world's going to give up on us. It just doesn't happen in the East. In the East, there are different gods. In the East, they're not worried about this. There is no defined future. The future is made by them. So they don't have the same hang-ups that people in the West have, and they're willing to, since they don't have those hang-ups, they don't have the same fears if they're educated. And I've spent a lot of time talking to people in Southeast Asia and Asia. If anything, they're too lax in their regulations. But they just, in general, don't have the same hang-up. They're willing to manipulate food for their sustenance, for the betterment of themselves and their society.